Okay, Job 9 and 10, the one about compassion. Okay, Job. Just as an intro, when we are suffering, we do not need platitudes. We need compassion. We need kindness. We need a listening ear. Maybe we need a hug. That depends on our comfort level with the person offering it. But for the most part, Job's friends come in like a wrecking ball. They are correct in their theology, but they lack empathy and compassion. They have really bad timing, honestly. I think the nicest thing they did was that they were silent for a whole week before they started lecturing Job. But after that, it really wasn't very kind what they did to him. They accused Job of wrongdoing, but they don't have any evidence for that wrongdoing. So let's just dive into it, shall we? Job 9 and 10. Then Job responded. We're going to start in Job 9, verses 1 through 4. Indeed, I know that this is so, but how can a human win against a case against God? Whoever might want to argue with him could not answer him. One question in 1,000. His heart is so wise, his strength is great. Who can resist him and succeed? So Job is still upholding the sovereignty of God. He's still respecting God. He's still holding true to the good things about God, even though he's suffering. And for me, yes, I'm sure losing his wealth was difficult, and I'm sure losing his health was difficult. To me, it's got to be losing those 10 kids. Don't you think that would have been the hardest part? I don't know. I don't know how to quantify that. But I think losing all 10 of your children all at one time, I think for me would definitely be the hardest thing. So anyway, this is what he's dealing with. He's still holding true to his faith in God, and he's still clinging to that, but he is making a complaint. He absolutely is complaining. Once again, I forget that this is a tracking one, and so if I move over here to take a sip, the camera's going to follow. I may edit this out, I may not. We'll see. Okay, according to Rashi, who can resist him and succeed in winning a complaint is comparable to the hardening of Pharaoh's heart in Exodus 9:12. Job is making this point. He's confirming that despite his suffering, he's not hardening his heart to God. I think this is from a place of grief, sadness, absolutely, but also really genuinely wanting to understand. He's not flippantly asking God to explain. He is coming from a place of wanting to understand. Going on to, so we're in Job 9, verse 10. He does great unsearchable things, wonders beyond our knowing. This is Job with a heart of worship, right? This isn't a sinner who's backsliding regardless of what his friends are going to accuse him of. Job's friends are living by this like mathematical formula of faith. X happened to Job, so he must have done Y. And if Job would just, repent, then God will take away all of his suffering. Well, later, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. Later, God explains that this isn't the case. And he later has Job make sacrifices for his friends. So we know that that's not true. We know that these lectures that his friends are just throwing at him, some parts of them are theologically correct, but some of them are not. In chapter 9, Job is still in the middle of his pain and his shock, and he does express some doubts. He does. But he's still trusting in God's character. And I think that's interesting to note, that he does have some doubts, but he trusts in God's character and that God is ultimately good. Verse 19, if it's a matter of force, look how mighty he is. If justice, who can summon him to court? But then we have Job saying some things that aren't simply not true of God. Like in verse 23, when disaster brings forth sudden death, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. What strikes me is that later when God does address Job, he does finally answer him, right? God doesn't go through and go point by point for all the things that either Job or his friends said right or wrong, right? He is more he's dealing with the heart matters and he's dealing with the faith matters, but he doesn't call Job to account for the specific things that he said either right or wrong later on. And I think that's so interesting because it makes me believe that God can handle our anger and our grief and our raw emotions. I think God can handle when we are stunned beyond belief, in the worst moments of our lives, in the darkest days when we cannot think straight and we cannot understand what is going on when the thing that we have feared the most has happened. His shoulders, God's shoulders, are big enough to carry our burdens and to carry on. Because he's not a cosmic judge ready to pounce on us any more than he's the grandfatherly type that's going to willingly overlook our sin. He is righteous and he is holy. And I read somewhere you cannot stare directly in the sun, but you expect to casually stroll in front of the Creator. And I thought that was so good, right? In modern times, we've lost the sense of God's majesty. We don't understand the proportion of how great and how holy he is. But that doesn't do away with the fact that he has also adopted us and calls us his friends, and it enhances it, right? His holiness, his bigness, his perfectness, his just majesty, it should humble us that he calls us his friends. It's not like we have to set those two issues aside, that he's so big and so great and so holy over here, but also he calls us his friend over here. No. How amazing that the creator of the universe, the one who numbered the stars and called them by name, also calls you a friend. That's so cool. We cannot, right? Just like we talked about temperance, moderation. On one hand, we should acknowledge that God is our friend, but on the other hand, we absolutely have to remember that he is holy and we are not. He is perfect and we are not. He knows all and we do not. Okay, so God is calling us by name. Isn't that astonishing? Okay, Job chapter 9, verse 27 through 28. If I say I forget my complaining, I'll put off my sad face and be cheerful, that I'm still afraid of all my pain, and I know you will not hold me innocent. Okay, now, yes, Job's talking to his friend, but he's also talking to God, right? I think these are some of the most beautiful verses that we have on grief in the Bible, and maybe that's not what they were originally intended for, but that's absolutely how I read them. Because when we get honest, we've been there. We have faith. We know our God can do anything, but sometimes he doesn't, right? Sometimes cancer is eradicated and that close call is just that. It's a close call and we are okay. The people that we love most were saved. We get a healing. We get a financial boost right when we need it. We get the miracle that we asked for. But sometimes we don't. And it would not be a big thing for him. Sometimes he could have just as easily healed our loved one as the person's down the street. He's God. He's done so many small miracles in our life. Why couldn't he do this one thing? Why couldn't he save this one person? Why couldn't he prevent this one car accident? Why couldn't he heal this one person's body? Why does a parent of small children get cancer? Why does job loss happen? Why, when we're already struggling with our faith, do our sons get sent off to war? Why, after we've made a decision for Christ, cleaned up, sobered up, and are following him with our whole hearts, we get a cancer diagnosis? Why do we still face unspeakable tragedies? Why, God? Why? Job, he has a pastor's heart here. He is asking the same questions that we do in our darkest moments, and he's being genuine and he's being honest. Verse 33, there is no arbitrator between us who could take both his hands, or could place his hands over both of us. Now we're getting to the crux of the matter, right? This is the heart of the matter. Bad things happen because we live in a fallen world. We know that. Job reminds us of precisely why Jesus came to earth. Now, obviously, Job was written many years before Jesus came, but Job's asking for an arbitrator. He's asking for someone to be on God's side and his side, right? And that's exactly what Jesus was. Job 10:1, I am just worn out. Because grief will do that, won't it? I have a problem admitting that as a parent. My greatest fear is losing my children. Absolutely. And I don't think I'm alone in that. But Job lost all of his children. I imagine that would be staggering. Job is continuing to lay out his case as we move into Job 10, verse 2. I will say to God, don't condemn me. Tell me why you were contending with me. He just wants to know why. Verse 8, Your hands shaped me, your own hands shaped me. They made me. So why do you turn against me? Job has lost everything. And this is kind of, we're watching the breaking point in an existential crisis, right? Why is God punishing him? And at the same time, why are his friends just jumping on and adding to his pain? Guys, when someone faces a loved one, there are things that we should say and there are things that we should not say. And if we don't know the difference, then it's probably best that we just stay quiet. So some things that I think we all as Christians just need to stop saying are, I guess heaven needed her. Everything happens for a reason. She's in a better place now. She was just too good for earth. God understands our grief. Isaiah 25:6-8. What do we offer our grieving friends? Good food. God made a comfort food meal there in verse 6, if you allow my suggestion. And then he's removing the veil that keeps us from truly seeing. And then he's handling death itself, right? Okay. I don't know if I have time for this story or not. I think I will. All right, so my stepdad died 2 weeks before my 8th birthday in a work accident, and he was a lineman for Union Electric, and we had a big church, and they were very kind to continue to bring us meals, but there were some repeated things that did not help our grief, and it didn't help our faith. The same platitudes kind of were repeated over and over. What I learned from that time is, God doesn't actually offer us platitudes. It's humans that do that. The thing is, my stepdad was also the most solid Christian in my life at that point. And so I didn't really have anyone to tell me that the things that the church people were saying to me were theologically incorrect at best and harmful at worst. So we just need to be really, really careful of what we're telling people when they lose a loved one. So let's not do that, church. Let's not tell hurting brothers and sisters empty phrases. Let's not quote scripture at them when they're in the darkest day of their lives. Let's just not. Let's give them room to grieve. Let's not have them reframe it so that we feel better. Let's not tell them to get over it a week after they've lost their loved one. Let's go ahead and remember that God can handle the grief and often the anger that accompanies it. His shoulders are big enough, and sometimes it's enough for us, if we're the ones experiencing loss, to continue to trust God's goodness even when we don't understand. And if it's our friends that are suffering loss, sometimes the best thing we can do is meet their physical needs and be quiet. Thanks for joining me on this tough one on grief.